Imagine a courtroom filled with tension. The air is thick with anticipation as everyone waits for a 12-year-old orphan to speak. He's been quiet, unsure, and afraid to share his truth. But when he finally speaks, the room goes silent. What Michael reveals next is so shocking that they have to call the police. What secret could be so powerful, so dangerous, that it changes everything in an instant? Stay with us, because the answer will leave you stunned. Welcome back to our channel, where we bring you the most heart-wrenching, emotional, and jaw-dropping stories. Today we're diving into the story of Michael, a young orphan whose life was changed forever the moment he stepped into a courtroom. Michael wasn't just another kid fighting for a new home, he was the key to unlocking a devastating truth. The Johnsons, a seemingly perfect couple, had been fighting for his custody for months. But no one knew that Michael carried with him a secret that, once revealed, would shake their world to its core. What was this secret? Why was it so powerful that it could not only change his future but also lead to the intervention of the police? Stay with us as we take you through the twists and turns of Michael's story, one that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about family, loyalty, and truth. Michael's story wasn't like any other orphans. At just 12 years old, he had already seen and experienced things no child should have to endure. Born to a young mother who loved him dearly, Michael's world came crashing down the day his mother died in what everyone believed to be a tragic car accident. It was a sad, empty excuse for a life that would soon take another twisted turn. But Michael knew something others didn't. The death of his mother wasn't an accident. He was too young to understand all the details, but the memories he had, fragments of conversations, flashes of his mother's fear, and whispers in the dark told him there was more to the story. His mother wasn't just taken from him by fate. She had been taken by someone close, someone with secrets of their own. After her death, Michael bounced from one foster home to the next, never quite fitting in. It seemed like no one wanted him, until the Johnsons came into the picture. They were a wealthy, well-known couple who, on the surface, seemed perfect. They had everything: money, status, and a pristine reputation. It didn't take long before they expressed interest in adopting Michael, and for a moment, Michael thought maybe, just maybe, he could finally have a family who would love him. But there was a catch. Michael wasn't just a regular orphan, he was the heir to a small fortune, the inheritance from his late mother. That's when the Johnsons' true intentions began to unfold. They didn't just want to adopt Michael for the sake of family, they wanted him because they believed they could control his inheritance. But Michael knew something they didn't. He knew the truth. And soon, everyone else would too. The courtroom was silent, except for the sound of the judge's gavel echoing in the large, imposing room. Michael sat there, a tiny figure surrounded by strangers, his eyes nervously darting from the Johnsons to the lawyer, asking him questions. His hands fidgeted in his lap, and his lips trembled ever so slightly. He was barely 12, and yet here he was, at the center of a battle that would change his life forever. Everyone in the room wanted something from him. The Johnsons wanted him because they believed he was their ticket to the wealth they so desperately craved. The lawyers wanted his testimony to confirm their case. But what did Michael want? His gaze drifted to the back of the courtroom, where he could just make out the figure of the social worker who had been with him since the beginning. Her face, usually filled with encouragement, was now lined with concern. She had been there for him, offering comfort, yet even she didn't know what Michael was hiding. No one did. As the lawyer's questions continued, Michael's throat tightened. The pressure weighed on him like an unbearable burden. He was caught in a silent war between truth and fear. His mother's words, the last she had ever said to him, echoed in his mind. Don't trust the people who smile the most, Michael. They're the ones with the darkest secrets. The Johnsons, sitting across the room, seemed so kind, so eager to make him part of their family. But Michael could see through the facades. He knew things that no child should have to know. He had been silent for so long, but now, with the eyes of the courtroom on him, the secret he carried threatened to burst forth. Would he speak out, risking everything, or would he remain silent, allowing his own fear to keep him locked in a cage of lies? The room had been growing more tense by the second. The lawyers were pushing Michael harder now, asking him questions that demanded an answer. But still, he hesitated, looking down at his hands, too afraid to speak. The Johnsons, sitting across from him, were growing impatient. Their smiles, once warm and inviting, had faded into thinly veiled frustration. They had been so sure of winning. But Michael's silence was not what they had expected. The judge, a stern middle-aged man, glanced down at the boy, his eyes softening for a moment. Michael had barely said a word the entire time, and the weight of the case seemed to hang heavily in the air. Everyone in the room knew Michael was hiding something huge. But what? And then, just as the courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath, Michael stood up. His small frame quivered slightly as he gazed at the judge, then slowly turned toward the Johnsons. His voice broke the silence, shaky but determined. "I have to tell you something I should have said a long time ago." The room went still. The sound of people shifting in their seats seemed deafening in the silence that followed. "I know what happened to my mom," Michael continued, his voice growing steadier. "She didn't die in a car crash. She was murdered. And I know who did it." He paused, letting his words sink in, the weight of his confession hanging in the air like a thunderstorm waiting to break. The entire courtroom seemed to freeze. Gasps erupted from the spectators, and the Johnsons' faces drained of color. Michael wasn't looking at them anymore. He was looking at the truth, and it was finally going to come out. "It was you." The room erupted into chaos after Michael's revelation. The air was thick with shock, disbelief, and confusion. The Johnsons sat frozen in their seats, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear. The once perfect couple now looked like criminals caught in the act. Lawyers scrambled to find their footing, trying to process what had just been said. The judge, too, seemed momentarily lost for words. But Michael stood there, his back straight, his face set with quiet determination. The truth, the one he had carried with him for so long, was out in the open now. No more hiding, and no more pretending, and no more living in the shadow of fear. The social worker, who had watched from the back of the room, hurried forward to support him. Michael had finally found his voice, and with it, a sense of freedom. As police officers arrived to take statements, the Johnsons were escorted out of the courtroom, their smug expressions now replaced with a cold sweat of guilt. The truth was undeniable. Michael's mother had been murdered by the very people who had promised to care for him. The investigation into her death was officially reopened, and the evidence Michael provided was the missing piece of the puzzle. As the courtroom emptied, and the weight of what had just occurred began to sink in, Michael was finally able to breathe. The world he had known, the one filled with lies and uncertainty, was crumbling around him. But in its place, something new began to form, a chance for him to find the family he had always deserved, one that would love him not for his inheritance, but for who he truly was. If you were as shocked by Michael's story as we were, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartbreaking and jaw-dropping tales like this one. And if you're curious about what happens next, check out our next video. Trust us, you won't want to miss it.